Okay, guys, we are back and we have Sophia with us. She is an clinical EFT practitioner and certified in NCS, right? I got that right?
Yes,
Okay.
NeuroChange Solutions. Yes, I'm a trainer for NeuroChange Solutions. Yes.
Okay. So I'm excited to dive into things. What does all of that mean?
Yeah.
Okay, so I help people break away from anxiety, limiting beliefs, and trauma using transformational EFT and principles of neuroscience so they can create the best life that they want for themselves and create a permanent change, not a temporary change.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
I love that.
Is,
Who likes temporary changes, anyways? So, how did you get into this work?
Due to my own chronic illness that wasn't healing for 16 years or so, and I worked in the medical field. I have a master's in epidemiology, and I was debilitated from a chronic condition. And when everything else was failing, because I never really figured out how someone super healthy can become so sick. I started uh, uh, researching how the brain and body works. And that's where the neuroscience comes in. But a component was missing. So it's great, yeah, to control our thoughts, but the emotions are not that easy. And you master your emotions, you master your reality, but you have to master your emotions. And that's where emotional freedom techniques came in. And the combination of both uh, enabled me to be free, healthy, and off any possible med on planet Earth.
Awesome. And I mean, I personally couldn't agree more. I think it's interesting to see how, like, the foundational relationship that most people tend to have with their emotions. And I'm curious, both of your perspective. I feel like we were raised with, when it comes to emotions, to think of them as like good and bad, right and wrong, based on our environment and like what was acceptable in our home. But I think the lens we're supposed to look at them through is one of understanding. But if we're gonna label it, shouldn't it be like healthy or unhealthy, right?
Dr. David Hawkins did the maps of consciousness and he scales the emotions and he says anything below 200, so 200 is neutrality,
Yeah.
is life depleting. It depletes the body's energy. And anything above 200 gives life. And when you hit 540, which is joy, you get a spontaneous healing. That's where the miracles take place.
I mean, I love that book. I
Yeah.
have his like energetic chart printed out over my office. Um, and as like a resonance of state, I totally agree with it. I think there are differences in my experience of like if I lose someone I love, I might dip down into the grief field and frequency, but I don't think that's necessarily bad. I think that's a healthy reflection of the relationship I had with that person.
Absolutely. So let's break down what emotions. So there's difference between emotions and feelings. They're
Okay.
not the same. So emotions is energy in motion. And where do they get produced? They get produced from the limbic brain and its chemistry coming inside the body to give us information. Right? So if we don't feel the emotion, so that's chemistry. It could be positive or negative, but let's say it's low frequency. It's the same thing shooting morphine in you or some whatever. You're just internally producing chemistry. We were taught not to feel and disconnect. We thought our emotions with our head. So when that chemistry is not felt and you get more and more and more, it becomes toxic. That's when these emotions are harmful to the body. When there's grief, absolutely, we're going to feel it. Shows our love and our unconditional love to the person and we're missing it, but we can't feel it for 10 years.
No.
Eventually, we have to start transmuting it and letting it go. And with grief, actually, there's below angry. Why did the person leave? Oh, the anger and the sadness. What could have been? I could have
Mm.
had a better life. So there's not just grief. There's a variation that comes with the grief emotion. And once we process it, we can reopen our heart and become better people. Now, let's discuss what people do, and I'll give a silly example. It's the middle of the night, and you hear something in your kitchen, as if someone's breaking in. So one person wakes up because the reticular activating system wakes you up. You go to the kitchen, and you see it's the cat that was locked out. And you say, you breathe in, you say, what a relief. That is an emotion. The first one, the waking up, all of us experience when we hear the noise. The second, this first person felt the emotion, let it go. Now we have the other person. He gets up from bed, goes, the darn cat. Why didn't my boyfriend buy this cat? And blah, blah, blah. I'm going to kill this cat. I'm sick of this boyfriend. It goes on for 15, 20 minutes. That becomes a feeling, and you're putting so much toxicity in the body. And that's what's happening. I don't remember them off my head. There's only 6 emotions that feelings, no emotions that are there, and all of them are feelings. It's the looping that happens. And science has told us that when we can process it without judgment, breathe into them when they actually happen, the emotions only last 90 seconds.
Yeah. What do
Okay.
you think? Like,
I'm
what do you see with your clients when they're coming in? Do you see a lot of rumination with them?
Yeah, I think I haven't read this book that you two have read, but the language that I use is some people need help feeling their feelings and some people need help getting unstuck from their feelings. That's how I would describe that. But what you're saying makes sense too.
So what do you think, or why, I guess, why do you think people are so resistant to understanding or getting to know their feelings?
We get stuck on certain low frequency feelings that are familiar to us. I found from my practice. So the default could be anger, which is a regular emotion, or victimization, because if they go and refeel the emotion. So in EFT, we take them back to the past, but they never relive the experience. They only address the emotion. Below that emotion comes a big grief or sadness, mostly sadness and powerlessness. And that's what they're terrified of feeling, because the moment it comes up, they think it's never going to end. So it's easier for them and it's protecting them to always feel the anger, to always feel the trigger. So they get stuck in these emotions that were familiar with them, yet they have to do the work to release the other ones. And anger is one that's looped. There's anger, there's fear below it, and then the fear of fear. Dr. David Hawkins discusses that as well. And they don't want to go and look at that. And so that's what they do. That's why they like to get, they don't like, unconsciously, they get stuck at that level. And if they
Hmm.
feel safe and you can bring them in, I've had 2 clients this week that they sobbed for 10 or 15 minutes, and there was a release, a 50% decrease from their illness just by the sobbing, and they never wanted to look at it
Yeah.
because the situation was very ugly. So it was easier for them to be angry or distracted or whatever it is, or busy.
Hmm.
And some people get stuck in unforgiveness. No, I'm not going to forgive. No, I'm not going to forgive. Well, where's that toxic energy? It's going to go, it's in you. You're not forgiving for the other person. You're forgiving for yourself.
Yeah, when I was growing up, I had a wall full of quotes, and I never knew why I put this one up there because I didn't like it because I was a grudge holder when I was a kid. But for whatever reason, I put it up on the wall because maybe it was just a subconscious knowing I needed to see it. But it said holding on to anger is like holding a hot piece of coal and expecting the other person to get burnt. And like it was funny because in my middle school days, I'm like, I don't understand it. Like they should be feel burnt, like they're burnt. But as an adult, it makes perfect sense to me. Um, and what's coming up for me is Alicia and I just went and saw Eckhart Tolle in Miami. What was that, 2 weeks ago? 3 weeks ago? Something like that. And I mean, he is enlightening, let me tell you. And then Alicia and I had like a 5 hour car ride home full of enlightened energy, jibber jabber. Um, but I know for me, like those thoughts kept kind of circulating. And I had what I call a shower moment where I was able to kind of identify more with my energy spirit and find a way to soothe some of my own emotionality and understand like the ego attachments that I had had to those beliefs. And it was really interesting healing. So I recorded this whole thing and sent it to Alicia, and I was like, does any of this make sense? And thankfully she was there with me at a cart, so it made sense. But I mean, everything you're saying definitely resonates with me. I find that I do similar work and that a lot of people struggle with kind of accepting themselves as that like energy. Um, so how do you approach that?
Well, I think it takes time and you have to go through all the stages. So, and I'm going to make a comment and I hope it doesn't sound judgment. So, a lot of people in the spiritual community believe that you just need to go to the high vibration. You cannot go to the high vibration till you actually release the low vibration that's in the body, because energy can never be created or destroyed. So, if your perception feels that the person harmed me, which is fine, we need to clear that anger first and then evolve to the next step. So a lot of people, I don't know, I've gotten a few people, no, I have to be in the high vibration. Well, that toxic energy is still there. So I try to engage them and explain to them how it works because uh, so they can shift. And then I also have people who go nuts with affirmations. Well, if you're angry, you're in beta brainwaves. No affirmation is going to pass your brainstem in beta brainwaves. The affirmation is going to come through your brainstem if you're in alpha, theta, and some people are capable to be awake in delta. So when you're in a good state, now the information can come in. Now affirmations are super powerful. And I just had a client the other day, well, I don't want to look at it because, it's going to drop my vibration. And that's the one who had the 50 release of her symptoms. So we looked at it and she was happy. She was happy. And I think I retrained them. And now it's up to them to see it. And I also try to train them so they can keep the momentum that they need to do something in the days in between. You just don't show up for the session. So you
Mhm.
continue what it is. So tapping on its own makes the body feeling safe. There's no way a tiger could be here and I'm just tapping. So automatically, so the requirement is that they do 20 minutes a day. If they want to do more, they're welcome to do more, but minimum 20 minutes a day to self-regulate. And now eventually that momentum, the pendulum is going to start swinging upstream to a higher vibration. Now it's easier for you to be in your happy state.
Mm.
So I educate them, I do practices with them, and then eventually they get there because knowledge is the precursor to experience. They need to understand why they're doing and what they're doing, and then they're more likely to do it.
I agree with what you just said. Again, the language is different in the way that I describe things, but I definitely believe you have to deal with your emotions first. I don't think that you can get better if you just ignore the things that you've been through or the experiences that you've had and just try to move past it, which is a big thing. And I think in our culture, I think
Yeah.
uh, just move on, just power through, just dig deeper or whatever the
Yeah.
phrases are. Um, so I'm a big believer that you have to go back too, and I do believe that you're right that if you're able to do that, then you have a better ability to experience the positive, I won't say positive, but higher vibration emotions that you're talking about.
Absolutely. And you're shutting down. So traumatic memories are not properly time stamped. So each of our experiences time stamped properly. It's like our life is a picture frame, like in the movie. So traumatic memories are not usually properly time stamped, and they're playing as high definition in the hippocampus. So even if they don't want to look at that, it's always replaying, draining the person at the background. And when there's a trigger, they get activated. So it's a stimulus and a response, and they're always getting triggered and they're just getting worse, which is why we need to look at that experience. So what holds it replaying is the belief and mostly the emotion. The emotion is the glue. So once we neutralize the emotion, that picture frame, and I do re-imprinting with it. So I would go back and re-imprint, and I'll address what re-imprinting is. Now the memory gets time stamped correctly, and now it's stored in a different part of the brain. It gets stored low definition in the neocortex. The same place, if I were to ask you, Alicia, what did you eat 5 days ago? And you say, huh? I don't remember. I say it not because I read it in a book. I have on my own traumatic experience. They didn't get filed immediately, but it's like, was it me? It's like a vague memory. They're getting wiped out because I also did matrix reimprinting or hacking reality because I'm trained. It's the same thing, but I got trained by someone else over them because memories are between neurons as well. Okay, so when we prune the synaptic connection, the brain is not going that route because there's no emotion anymore. We're pruning it, pruning it, pruning it. And now we create a new memory with a positive emotion and an empowering belief. Oh my goodness, I survived that. I survived it. Now it's more powerful. Now you're carving a new your pathway, and that, like, I go back and yeah, I have a vague memory of it. That's all it is. There's no charge.
Do you do,
Now that, yeah,
sorry, do you do NSDR too?
I don't know what that is.
Uh, non-sleep deep rest. It's very similar to kind of what you're sharing. I had a friend of mine whose daughter got attacked by their dog when she was like 18 months. And so naturally there was the trauma my friend had. And she went to a NSDR specialized therapist who kind of put her into like a hypnotic state. And then with practice, like she was able to see that moment where the dog turned and originally latched on to her daughter's face, but instead she saw the dog turn and give her daughter a kiss on the face, which is a memory she has with many other moments throughout her life with the daughter and the dog. And so she was almost like able to like shift the memory pattern and attach an other aspect of a memory to that. So that's why I was asking because it
No, I
sounded
don't do that, but it's similar. So yes, EFT once, so a lot of people, when they do EFT, they leave the emotional, if they can't bring it down to a zero, they leave it at three. And that's too high. So
how do you
specific,
measure that?
well, the person, a number flashes in you and you
Okay.
connect with your body. So I bring it to zero. If that means we have to do an extra session, we bring it down to zero. Then I have them express whatever it is. We bring the person into the matrix, express whatever it is they want. So today I had a client that wanted to express, scream and yell and whatever. She did that. Then afterwards, I re-imprint a memory of the choosing of the younger self.
Mm.
And so it's almost very similar. And then that way, yeah, and they're already by tapping all this time, now their brain waves is alpha, which is the hypnagogic state, but they have their eyes closed, but they're not laying down. And then they replay that. And now they got an empowering belief. And they had
Hmm.
a cognitive shift. So the cognitive shift has to come from the client, not from me.
Naturally, yeah.
Makes it more empowering. So that's how it's, and it's called, some people use matrix reimprinting. I was trained with someone called hacking reality. It was a longer training, but they can't use the same name. So
I think I'm trained in hypnosis, and from what I was taught, most of these techniques are born out of hypnosis. It's all related. So EMDR is related, ART is related, and it sounds like what you're talking about is similar as well, and probably what
absolutely.
you were referring to as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Also, I didn't know you were trained in hypnosis. Why have you
That's
not done that on
wonderful.
me? That sounds like so much fun.
Well, there's a lovely, I'm not a Bible person, but there's a lovely story in the Bible. And I love Neville Goddard, if you ever read him. And he has revision. So this Matrix reimprinting is based on the Bible story and the revision of Neville Goddard. And there were two stories, the Potter's House and the Unjust Steward. So in the Potter's House, he was making a pot, but it wasn't his liking, and he wanted to discard it, but he was advised to remold it to a beautiful whatever thing he was. And that's actually what we do. Once the emotional charge takes out, he remolded it to something beautiful. And it's a similar story with the unjust steward. He's about to be fired and blah, 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 because he didn't collect the taxes. I don't remember the story well. And then miraculously, he revises it and creates a solution, a win-win for all, and he doesn't get fired.
eh,
Hmm, look at that, full circle.
I have a couple questions. Initially, you were talking about illness and releasing illness sort of by releasing emotion. And I've seen probably on social media and whatnot, Laura and I like to joke about that. Um, People saying that certain emotions live in certain places in the body. Do
That's
you subscribe to that? And if so, what
absolute.
emotions live where?
I don't know all of them. I usually look them up, but anger lives in the liver, the kidneys. It's based on Chinese medicine.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so EFT is a combination of cognitive psychotherapy and doing acupuncture without needles. So we're tapping on the body's meridians, and when the emotions get stuck in the body and they're not processed, they create density. So the electrical charge between the cells now doesn't properly work. So by tapping on it, we're moving it. So kidneys hold fear, lungs hold grief, heartache is the heart, and usually the throat is you weren't able to speak up your truth. Now there's a further advanced based on that called German New Medicine, and there's a biological cause for everything. So someone who has pneumonia and can't breathe, it's not in a German New Medicine, it's not a bacterial infection. And it's actually feeling powerless to the world, unable to take another breath. Asthma is a double traumatic event. And I did that, and it's a very fearful traumatic event that the person wasn't able to address and also stuck in the situation. So it's fear of some sort of a life, but also stuck not being able to escape. And they can't breathe to get out, which is why it hits the lungs. And when the imprint or the trauma gets resolved, the person heals. And we know it's a valid science because anybody who's fully trained in German new medicine can take a CAT scan and find it on the brain and tell you what you have.
I have heard of this German new medicine. Um, I don't remember how. I was like racking my brain trying to remember where it came from, but I don't remember. Um, so I will give you a specific question then. Earlier today, I'm talking to a client who um, has been seeing a pelvic floor specialist because she has a bladder issue, and the pelvic floor specialist was telling her that when her nervous system gets overstimulated, she tends to tighten up the muscles in the pelvic area. So, and then that causes stress on her bladder. And she was saying to me, why is that the response that my nervous system has? And I was like, I have no idea.
I have an answer for that.
Okay.
Uh, so if she cannot fully empty her bladder and it tightens up, what do animals do? They mark their territory, right? So when she was young, she didn't feel safe. She couldn't mark her territory. If something's triggering her right now in her life and she doesn't feel safe. When the pelvic floor tightens up, it's a matter of safety. So in EFT and German new medicine, well, my other training, all imprints happen between the ages of first trimester till 7, and sometimes I'll extend it to 13. With an exception of me, my incident was so traumatic, it was a standalone. And so, but most people, it's that. So there's a constant retrigger, and every time the pelvic floor, it could be a smell, a sight, or even a voice, it's going to tighten the pelvic floor. And so she's not gonna, so digestive issues, constipation, you cannot let go the experience. You just can't let go. Diarrhea is the opposite. I don't want this. I don't want, they use the word morsel in German medicine. I use imprint. I need to push it out of my system. I need to expel it out of my system. I want it out. If it goes up, I want it out, but I'm so angry, it's going to give me heartburn. I'm burning up. Skin is separation. And when there are boils and pimples, the person's fuming. So
Uh,
it's separation and fuming. Yeah, so we are energetic beings, right? So you're in a holographic reality. This is your avatar. You're living in a virtual reality.
The
So
Matrix.
yeah, so everything is code, which is why I like German new medicine. So there's a biological program for everything, and the body is trying to protect you to live longer. And it's telling you to look at. A perfect example, did I say it before? Because sometimes I forget what I said. Her shoulder couldn't move. She's had a frozen shoulder for years. Um, she's a new client, so we worked on it. She had a story where her physician did something inappropriate, and as a child, she wanted to do this, but she didn't. And so the shoulder was frozen. She was able to rotate a little bit the shoulder for the first time once she released the emotional charge. I had a woman with Tourette's. I think this is a better story. She came to me. She said she got it at 4. Somehow I felt it wasn't at 4. So we did a birth reimprint. So we go through her going before she gets conceived, going through the birth process. And Tourette's is when the person has these jerky movements and uncontrollable, so they shake. And sometimes there's a lot of anger and they cuss. So
those are my favorites.
yeah. So you okay? So first trimester. So we were doing the first trimester. Her Tourette's gets full blown. I asked her, what does she see as an embryo? Because she's the embryo now, right? First trimester. She sees her mother being slammed, the mother's face being slammed on the crib. And who's slamming it is her father. explains the hatred towards the father, and her Tourette symptoms left.
Hmm.
And why? The mother was getting a jerky movement. And remember, the
Right.
embryo was little. She was just being slammed and slammed. He literally was trying to kill her. So there it goes. So nothing comes out of nowhere. It's just, and the body was telling her all these years, I'm trying to release the trauma. So the symptoms, not all for all conditions, 90% of the symptoms are in the healing phase. But most people, the symptoms, people think it's in the stress phase. So they attack the symptoms. And so what happens, it's called a hanging conflict. You never get to heal, it becomes chronic because you're not stopping to say, what's the message for me here? What is it that I need to heal? Like the frozen shoulder was telling, slow down. There's a message here. There's a memory that's frozen in time that you need to release. That's very toxic for your body. So she was blaming and attacking the shoulder for all her life when it was related when she was so young.
What does TMJ represent?
Usually here it's anger, but I have to look at the specific. So there's for every single condition, there's a specific emotion. So it gives you the emotion and what the story is. I'm not able to escape, or there's shame because I'm not part of the clan, or whatever it is. But usually the jaw is a lot of anger, and I would have to look that up. Happy to email you to see if they have something for it. So I usually look at the list, I get the history, and then we find the memories, and that's how I do it.
So I'm intrigued, and definitely email me because my it's for my mom.
Yeah, I'm happy to. And I
Uh
have your email for afterwards.
yeah, and she never had it, and then when my nephew was born, it's her first grandchild, and there was a lot of stress with just in-laws and things, and all of a sudden whenever there was kind of conflict in the relationship with my with other people, that's when she would kind of take on the well, what it sounds like is, and what she would explain is she was taking on the emotions of others, and that's when her TMJ would get activated. So I'd
Yeah,
be
so
curious.
something was locking. We usually sometimes take the words literally, but I would have to look. So something got locked, and then maybe she couldn't take action. Usually, when there's something frozen or locked, is you're unable to take action. And that actually falls in line with Peter Levine's work, the somatic release. But I think if you use German new medicine and meta consciousness, oh, perfect. Let me copy this. Oops. And you use German new medicine together, now you can move much faster because in the somatic release, you have to figure out what it is. And though German new medicine gives you the guideline, and now you could do the somatic release. So what I had her do with the shoulder, for example, and it came, I didn't say a word. When I asked her when she was working on the thing, because usually her emotions are the chest and the head. Today she said the shoulder. So after we worked, I said, you're in the room. If you could take an action, what would that be? And then she uses the shoulder exactly, it was the left side because she had anger because the mother wasn't in there, which is the feminine side to protect her. So we knew what to declare. And she wanted to do this to the person, the physician, and she couldn't. But the body chose not to move the shoulder because she was young. If she had moved the shoulder, maybe this crazy person would have done something even worse.
Mm.
So the body was protecting her. So there was never a full movement. Now Peter Levine's work comes in. Now we know what it is. And now the movements have to be done in slow motion numerous times. And so eventually she was able to roll the shoulder. And she could never move it all the way back, but it moved longer, which is telling me there's one more memory there that needs to be resolved.
Now, I saw that you have also studied Joe Dispenza's work, and I was
Uh,
interested in how that plays into all of this.
So I'm one of his trainers, and I teach one of his course, Change Your Mind, Create New Results. So there's a core principle: your personality creates your personal reality. So we're creating our reality. And in order to change, we have to change how we think, act, and feel. And then we go using um, neuroscience. What happens when you're in survival? What happens when you're in creation? We discuss brainwaves. We discuss the three brains and how emotions and memories that flash in the body come and get stored in the mind, I should say, get stored in the body. So the thought is going to trigger neurotransmitters, neuropeptides. There's going to be an emotional release in the limbic brain that's going to come down. And if it's anger, it's going to activate the adrenals, and that gets stored into chemistry. And then we teach in the course how to use the brain waves to do mental rehearsal and meditation to create the reality you want, and how to find out, because Dr. Joe is very big, in order to change, it's not just you change your thoughts, emotions, and how you act. They have to be all three. Why? Because you have three brains. You have the neocortex, the limbic brain, and the cerebellum. The three brains have to work in unison, which is why thoughts, emotions, and deeds have to be in alignment. And then we find so we have to overcome the body, the environment, and time. And most people are terrified to deal with the body. They get the knot in the stomach and they think that's it. No, you have to overcome the body, the environment, and time. And then you do the reframing, having a different choice than the choice you did before. And then with mental rehearsal and all the other stuff, being in the creative state, you can't change in the survival state. Now you're going to create what you want. So it's a live course, an interactive course, and I love that course.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, and that does
I,
seem perfectly aligned with what you're talking about. Go ahead, Laura.
uh, Alicia already knows this, but when I read Dr. Dispenza's book, Breaking the Habit of Being You, which, highlights a lot of what you're talking about, it was pivotal. And like I've found that these books find me at a time when I need them most, which is so funny because I love all these books and I'll randomly pick up one. And it really helped me understand like what was going on in my body and how to work with my body to create that altered experience. So I'm definitely a fan. I think the course is amazing. Um, but yeah, that it was just pivotal. I think like without that understanding, I don't know how I would have like what you said something earlier, like information, you need information first to understand what you're going to do.
Knowledge is the precursor to experience. Yes, absolutely. You
Yeah,
need information, how it works, why it works in order for you to do it.
exactly. And what I was having was just this similar repeatable experience where I was just stuck in stress, couldn't take a break. And then once I understood the experience in my body and how to reverse engineer it, like he talks about in the book, I was like, oh, I know what's happening. My body is feeling like this. These are the thoughts. And like I was able to kind of go backwards, but it wasn't until I had that information, so validation to everything you just said, uh, that I could change my own experience. And I find when I work with my clients, it's definitely something that I try to talk them through so that when they do experience that kind of dissonance in themselves, they don't just kind of fall back on the repeatable pattern. You know what I mean?
Absolutely correct. Why I like the course, I love the book. I've read it, I think, 4 or 5 times. I can't remember how many. So the course is interactive. It's like 17 hours, 16 hours live because we do exercises. So they have to find out for themselves who are the people, what are the situations, what in the environment, what in their body is causing the issue. And they really have to work. I mean, it used to be taught 8 hours and 8 hours. It was exhausting. So now it's broken 4 hours. There's lecture, and then they have to do the exercises, and then they have to speak back. Because if they can't speak back, they haven't mastered what they learned. So
Mm,
it just stays in, neurons that fire together, wire together. If they can't repeat it, they didn't grasp it. So they
mm,
have to speak back to say it, and then they say also what they discovered. And then the course continues with a 30-day follow-up because he has a journal, and then I continue an additional 2 more weeks. So for 2 months, there's a follow-up to make sure they finish and doing every day what they learned in the course, because I've taken tons of courses. I took a Tony Robbins course, and I didn't sign up for anything else, and it just went out the window, right? You get lost. So we want to have momentum, and we want to embody it. And without embodiment, it's just not going to work.
mm-mm. Totally agree. That's amazing.
So you obviously still practice. How do people like do people get a hold of you through the podcast work you do or
Well, usually the podcast, I write a blog for people, who want to find me, but usually the podcast, and I offer a free consult first. So they see if, they like my style, or it's just to guide them because some people may not be ready, right? To guide them what it is that they want to do. And then I offer next week, I actually hadn't done it in a while. I'm offering a free masterclass on the 17th. Uh, just a little taste of what the course is going to be for them to sign up. And to be quite honest, if it wasn't for this work, I'd be dead a long time ago because I had a lot of health illness, and I'd be a miserable, not happy person. And I changed, and I want to share that. And I really don't want people to be victimized. I mean, I just worked in the medical field and I saw the indoctrination. My background is in medicine. I have a master's in epidemiology. I'm just, I fell for it. I was a big believer in it myself.
Hmm.
And after my own, and I think it's time for people to know that there's other choice. They ingrain you with this fear. And there are, if I break my hand, I am going to the doctor. But they asked me for a root canal. 3 years later, I never did the root canal. Did I have pain? Oh, I had dire pain in the beginning, but Dr. Joe's practices, because I've done 20 events and I'm, one of his trainers, the pain went away. And I had to do pattern intercept in the beginning because the fear, what if they kept on saying the jaw is going to be cut, it's going to dissolve and blah, blah, blah. Here it is, knock on wood, nothing. And I can chew on that side. It's not like I can't chew. And I never did the root canal. And I had other ailments that are left. And I needed stuff to sleep, which I don't take. I
Okay.
didn't do drugs. I didn't do drugs, but I needed to calm down and relax, and it was all because of my emotions. And my start with EFT was very rough. It was a garbage container opening, and the anxiety that was coming up and the anger that was coming up. I didn't even know that could be so much stuff in there.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things that I worry about when I start with somebody who's had a lot of trauma or stuffed a lot of emotions. And I tell them up front, this isn't going to be comfortable. This isn't going to be something that you enjoy initially. I think over time it can be more comfortable, but initially, yeah, there's a lot of stuff to drudge up. Laura did have to jump off here, and
And
I just wanted to say thank you so much for all of this because I've heard some of these things before, but I'm not familiar with these practices. So this was really interesting for me and educational, and I'm all about that. So I really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today.
oh, I want to thank you. And the questions were lovely, and you were open-minded. And I'm sorry that I was late. I'm really sorry for that. I couldn't get off the other podcast to run off. I don't know what happened. We had scheduled it for an hour. So anyway, but no, I love this work, and I I'm a happier person than I was. And you had wonderful questions. Did you love I follow Eckhart Tolle, but I have never gone to an event. Did
It
you
was
like his
really
event?
cool. Yeah. We were late to that too, actually, because I didn't realize I couldn't take a purse in, so we had to check the bag. But it felt like we heard everything we needed to. It was so beautiful.
He
He's
is so zen, so zen.
Yeah. And even he was talking about the part that we walked in on. He was talking about how suffering is necessary and how suffering is an opportunity to dig deeper and become more connected to yourself. And I don't think that's a huge mindset shift. Like, we don't think about it like that.
Yeah.
We definitely don't think about it like that. So I'm trying to adopt this new mindset. We'll see how it goes.
Oh, it was so lovely to have me, and I will look. So Laura wants a TMJ. So yeah, you're Alicia. I will look up the TMJ. By tomorrow, I will find it to see what German New Medicine says.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We
Thank you
appreciate
so much. Have a great day.
you
Bye
too.
bye.
Bye.